The mahogany doors close on the 48th floor of Northline Tower. The city below looks small. Inside, the Gates family waits for a verdict disguised as a will. Everyone expects Drake, the dependable son, to inherit control of the empire he helped build. Instead, his name is followed by a single sentence: nothing. No money, no assets, no explanation. The room shifts, smiles form. The humiliation is public, surgical, and final, or so it seems. Because in the world of serious money, the first outcome is rarely the real one.
Wait, I need you to do one thing right now. If you want to see how Drake's father planned this entire trap 3 years in advance, if you want to know what the hidden audit uncovered and whether the greedy heirs end up in prison or walk away free, then you need to smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Because I'm telling you, the next 15 minutes will completely flip your understanding of justice and revenge. This isn't just a story about inheritance. This is a masterclass in patience, strategy, and why sometimes losing is the only way to win. So hit subscribe now, drop a comment telling me if you would have stayed silent like Drake or fought the will immediately, and let's continue. Trust me, the courtroom reveal alone is worth it. Now, let's get back to the Gates family and watch greed destroy itself.
A conference room carved from old money and new ambition. The kind of space where deals are sealed and dynasties crumble, where the air conditioning is set to exactly 68 degrees and the silence costs more than most people's mortgages. 48 floors above Manhattan, where gravity feels negotiable and consequences arrive in envelopes sealed with wax. The Gates family sits arranged like chess pieces awaiting their final moves. Drake Gates occupies the chair closest to the window, his posture engineered from 15 years of board meetings where he was the only one who actually read the reports. Clean-cut, steady hands, a man whose integrity was so visible it made other people uncomfortable. He'd spent half his life translating his father's vision into quarterly earnings, turning Alexander Gates's blue-collar instincts into billion-dollar logistics networks. Everyone in the room knows what's coming. This is Drake's coronation disguised as paperwork. Across the table, Ethan Gates sprawls in his chair with the casual arrogance of someone who's never had to earn what he expects to receive. Sharp smile, restless eyes that dart between his phone and the attorney's briefcase like a gambler watching the dealer's hands. The older brother who mastered the art of being present without being useful, who could walk into a crisis and somehow make it about him. His suit costs more than Drake's monthly rent, purchased with advance money from an inheritance he hasn't technically received yet. And then there's Ashley Gates, seated at the head of the table as though she bought the position with the ring. Mid-50s, wrapped in elegance that feels calculated down to the angle of her crossed ankles. She'd married Alexander Gates 5 years ago, which in billionaire years might as well be yesterday, but she carries herself with the authority of someone who's already rewritten the family history in her favor. Polished, elegant, socially lethal, the kind of woman who could make concern sound like a threat and empathy feel like a warning. Marston Hale, the estate attorney, opens his briefcase with the mechanical precision of a man who's done this too many times to be moved by anyone's tears. He's been Alexander Gates's legal architect for 30 years, and his face has the emotional range of a probate form. He clears his throat, not because he needs to, but because it's what you do before you detonate someone's life. The paper crinkles. The sound fills the room like a fuse being lit. The last will and testament of Alexander Joseph Gates, Hale begins, his voice flat enough to iron shirts on. He reads through the preliminary clauses, the legal architecture that turns a life into an asset distribution chart. Then he reaches the heart of it, the part where love is supposed to be converted into inheritance. To my son, Ethan Gates, I leave the European logistics holdings, including all subsidiary operations and controlling interests in the Hamburg and Rotterdam facilities, valued at approximately $240 million. Ethan doesn't react, doesn't even blink. He knew this was coming. You can see it in the way he's already mentally spending it, probably on a casino in Macau that takes wire transfers. To my beloved wife, Ashley Rosewood Gates, I leave the primary estate in Greenwich, the liquid accounts held in the family trust's operating reserves, and full ownership of the Miami properties, valued collectively at approximately $410 million. Ashley nods once, a small movement, gracious, as though she's accepting a compliment at a charity gala, but her fingers tighten just slightly on her clutch, not from surprise, from confirmation. The room holds its breath. This is the moment. This is where Drake's name appears, followed by the crown, the kingdom, the vindication of every late night and every compromise and every time he chose principle over politics. Hale's eyes flick to Drake for just a fraction of a second, and in that fraction, Drake sees something he can't quite name. An apology, maybe, or a warning. To my son, Drake Alexander Gates, the pause is surgical. I leave him the understanding that true worth is measured not in what you inherit, but in what you protect. To him, I bequeath no financial assets, no property, and no shares in Northline Group. The silence that follows is the kind you can suffocate in. Drake's face doesn't move, not a muscle. He spent 15 years in rooms where showing emotion is the same as showing weakness, and that training holds. But inside, something fractures. Not anger, not yet. Confusion. The logic doesn't compute. His father built this empire with the kind of moral mathematics that made bankruptcy impossible and betrayal unthinkable. Alexander Gates rewarded loyalty, punished deception, and believed that character was the only asset that appreciated over time. So why would he leave his most loyal son with nothing? Ethan breaks first, a short laugh, quickly stifled, like someone trying not to enjoy a funeral. Ashley's expression shifts into something that could be mistaken for sympathy if you weren't watching her eyes. She reaches across the table as though to comfort Drake, but he pulls back. He doesn't want her pity. He doesn't want anyone's pity. "Is there an explanation?" Drake asked, his voice steady despite the earthquake happening in his chest. "A letter? Anything?" Hale closes the folder. The will is clear and legally binding. There are no accompanying letters for beneficiaries. However, there is a provision regarding the family trust structure that will be disclosed at a later date, pending probate clearance. Ashley stands, smoothing her dress as though smoothing over the entire interaction. "Drake, I'm sure your father had his reasons. Perhaps he felt you were already capable of building your own legacy." Her tone is honey with arsenic in it. Ethan rises too, and now the smile is even hidden. "Tough break, little brother. But hey, at least you got that understanding thing. That's worth something, right?" They leave, both of them, walking out of the room with the air of people who've just won something they didn't have to fight for. The door closes behind them, and Drake is left alone with Marston Hale and the wreckage of his expectations. "Why?" Drake asked, not to Hale, but to the empty room, to the ghost of his father. Hale packs his briefcase, every movement meticulous. He's been Alexander Gates's legal architect for 30 years, and his face has the emotional range of a probate form. He clears his throat, not because he needs to, but because it's what you do before you detonate someone's life. He pauses at the door. "Your father was many things, Mr. Gates. Impulsive was not one of them. I suggest you consider the possibility that what appears to be an ending might actually be a position." And then he's gone, too. Drake sits in the silence of the 48th floor, looking out to a city that feels very far away. He's been left with nothing, publicly humiliated, his father's favorite son reduced to a footnote in a will that reads like a verdict. The empire he helped build will now be run by a gambler and a predator. But somewhere in the part of his mind that learns strategy from watching his father negotiate with union bosses and hostile boards, a question forms. Not why did this happen, but what did his father see that no one else could? Because Alexander Gates didn't make mistakes, he made chess moves, and Drake just became the only piece on the board that no one was watching.
Drake doesn't contest the will. He doesn't hire lawyers or call press conferences or make impassioned speeches about justice. He simply disappears. Not dramatically, there's no storming out or burning bridges. He just stops showing up to the places where the Gates family performs their dynasty. He moves back to Astoria, to a modest apartment that costs less per month than Ethan spends on bottle service. The neighborhood smells like someone's grandmother cooking and sounds like actual human beings living actual lives. No doormen, no marble lobbies. No one cares that he used to have his name on a tower in Midtown. It's the first time in 15 years that Drake has felt invisible, and invisibility, he discovers, has a certain freedom to it. He takes a job, a real job, the kind where you answer to someone and collect a paycheck that requires budgeting. Nothing glamorous, consulting work for a mid-sized firm that handles supply chain logistics. The irony isn't lost on him. He's essentially doing what he did at Northline, just without the billion-dollar stakes and the family drama. His coworkers don't know who he is. They don't know he was disinherited. They just know he's good at his job and brings decent coffee on Fridays. Meanwhile, 48 floors above the city he's left behind, Ethan and Ashley are moving fast. Probate takes time, but they're treating the will like a credit card with no limit. Ethan books a suite in Vegas, calling it a business development trip. Ashley starts renovating the Greenwich estate, hiring designers who specialize in making old money look like new money. They're spending the inheritance before the ink on the death certificate is dry. Drake watches from a distance. Not actively, he's not stalking them on social media or hiring investigators, but information has a way of traveling in circles where everyone knows everyone, and Drake still has friends in places that matter. He hears things. Ethan buying a Miami condo in cash before the estate is even settled. Ashley setting up new LLCs in Delaware, moving money into structures that smell like offshore accounts wearing legal cologne. They're not just spending, they're hiding. And they're doing it with the confidence of people who think they've already won. Drake keeps receipts, not physical ones. He's not building a case, but he remembers the dates, the amounts, the patterns. It's the same instinct that made him good at running Northline, that ability to see the shape of things before they fully form. And what he's seeing is two people who are moving too fast, celebrating too loudly, spending too recklessly. Like they're afraid the money might disappear if they don't grab it all right now. But Drake stays quiet. He goes to work, he pays his rent, he eats dinner at places with laminated menus. And when people from his old life run into him, former colleagues, family acquaintances, people who used to seek his approval, he simply smiles and says he's doing fine. He doesn't defend himself, doesn't explain, doesn't justify. The silence makes people uncomfortable. But Drake has learned something his father knew instinctively. When someone expects you to fight, sometimes the most powerful move is to stand still. Because while everyone is watching Ethan and Ashley spend the money, no one is watching the clock. And somewhere in the legal machinery of Alexander Gates's estate, something is ticking.
4 months after the will reading, Ashley Gates makes a phone call that will destroy her life. She doesn't know it yet. The call is to a private wealth manager in South Dakota, one of those firms that specializes in trusts so opaque they make Swiss banks look like community credit unions. She wants to move money. Specifically, she wants to liquidate 30% of the liquid accounts she inherited and transfer them into a trust structure that exists in 3 jurisdictions at once. It's a smart move if you're trying to hide assets. It's a catastrophic move if you don't know what you're triggering. The wealth manager processes the request. The money moves. And somewhere in the digital architecture of the Gates estate, a clause activates. Not loudly, not with alarms or notifications, just a quiet ping in a legal database that alerts exactly one person, Marston Hale. Hale opens the file he's been waiting 4 months to open. The file that Alexander Gates gave him 3 years ago, along with instructions that were both simple and devastating. When they take more than 20% in the first year, begin the audit, and make sure you hire Lenora Fitch. Lenora Fitch is not someone you hire unless you want the truth, the whole truth, and every decimal point of the truth. She's a forensic auditor who treats financial records like crime scenes and has a conviction rate that would make prosecutors weep with envy. She's worked for the SEC, the IRS, and at least 2 sovereign nations trying to recover stolen assets. She's expensive, relentless, and emotionally invested in numbers the way some people are emotionally invested in their children. When Hale calls her, she already knows who the Gates family is. Everyone in her field does. Alexander Gates built an empire on clean books and transparent deals. His death made headlines. His will made gossip columns. But this is the case she's been waiting for. "How deep do you want me to go?" she asks Hale. 10 years back. Every transaction, every signature, every wire transfer. That'll take months. We have time. They don't. The audit begins quietly. No press releases, no court orders, just Lenora and her team of specialists pulling threads in a tapestry that Ethan and Ashley don't even know exists. They start with the obvious, the spending patterns since Alexander's death. Ethan's Vegas trips, Ashley's offshore consultants, the shell companies in Delaware and the condos in Miami, and the trust structures that look legal until you examine who actually controls them. But then they go deeper. They find signatures on medical power of attorney documents from the year before Alexander died, signatures that don't quite match his hand. They find transfers from the family trust to Ashley's personal accounts dated during periods when Alexander was in the ICU, too sick to authorize anything. They find emails between Ethan and Ashley discussing strategies for managing their father's declining health, talking about him like he's an inconvenient obstacle instead of a human being. They find the pattern, the systematic, calculated, multi-year pattern of 2 people slowly draining an empire while the man who built it was too weak to stop them. And then Lenora Fitch finds the smoking gun. Forged documents giving Ashley medical authority she was never granted, used to make financial decisions Alexander Gates would never have approved. Not opinions, not interpretations, hard evidence, the kind that doesn't care about charm or excuses or expensive lawyers. Drake knows none of this. He's still in Astoria, still working his job, still living the quiet life of someone who's been written out of the script. But one evening he gets a call from Marston Hale. "Mr. Gates, I think it's time we had a conversation about your father's estate." "I don't have anything to say about the estate. I wasn't part of it, remember?" "That," Hale says, "is precisely why you need to hear this."
New York County Surrogate's Court doesn't look like a place where justice happens. It looks like a place where paperwork goes to die. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old carpet and older grudges. But inside Courtroom 4B, something rare is about to occur. Consequences. Judge Sylvia Barron presides with the energy of someone who's seen every scheme, every manipulation, every variation of human greed that can be wrapped in legal language. She's in her 60s, with the kind of face that's earned every line by refusing to be impressed by money or pedigree or tears. When Lenora Fitch presents her findings, the judge doesn't gasp or react. She simply reads. For 40 minutes, she reads a report that documents in excruciating detail exactly how Ethan and Ashley Gates spent 2 years systematically defrauding an elderly man while he was dying. Ethan sits at the defense table, looking like someone who just realized the rules apply to him after all. His lawyers, expensive ones, the kind with corner offices and law degrees from schools that have waiting lists, are whispering frantically, trying to construct a defense out of technicalities and procedural objections. Ashley maintains her composure better, but there's a tightness around her mouth that wasn't there before. A calculation happening behind her eyes as she realizes the room is no longer on her side. Drake is there too, sitting in the back row. He wasn't required to attend, but Marston Hale suggested it might be educational. So far, it's been devastating. Listening to the forensic accountant detail how his father's signature was forged, how medical decisions were made without consent, how money was moved while Alexander Gates was too weak to hold a pen. It's not just evidence, it's desecration. The judge removes her glasses. Let me make sure I understand the facts as presented.
The defendants received substantial inheritances from Alexander Gates. Those inheritances were contingent on their status as lawful heirs acting in good faith. The audit reveals they spent years engaged in elder financial abuse, forgery, and systematic fraud against the decedent. Is that an accurate summary, Miss Fitch? Yes, Your Honor. Additionally, both defendants triggered the mandatory audit by liquidating more than 20% of their inherited assets within the first year, as stipulated in the estate's hidden clause. Hidden clause, the judge repeats, and now there's something almost appreciative in her tone. Counselor Hale, did Alexander Gates anticipate this outcome? Marston Hale stands. Your Honor, Alexander Gates was a man who understood that character reveals itself under pressure. He structured his estate to create precisely the conditions under which dishonest heirs would expose themselves. He set a trap. He created an audit mechanism triggered by greed. Whether that's a trap or simply accountability depends on one's perspective. Judge Barron almost smiles. Almost. The law is clear on this matter. Under New York's Slayer statutes and unworthy heirs provisions, individuals who commit fraud, abuse, or other unlawful acts against the decedent forfeit their right to inherit from that person's estate. The evidence presented is compelling and, frankly, damning. I am disqualifying both Ethan Gates and Ashley Rosewood Gates as beneficiaries of Alexander Gates's will. Ethan stands up fast, his chair scrapes the floor. You can't do this. That money is legally mine. Was legally yours, past tense. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Elder abuse, forgery, and fraud are not civil matters. They are crimes. Ashley doesn't stand. She doesn't move. She just stares straight ahead as the reality sets in. They didn't just lose the money. They lost everything. The inheritance, the reputation, potentially their freedom. The victory they celebrated 4 months ago was actually the door closing on a cage. Which brings us, Judge Barron continues, to the matter of the estate's disposition. Counselor Hale, please explain the secondary trust structure. Hale opens another folder. Drake recognizes the motion. It's the same one his father used when he was about to deliver news that would change everything. Your Honor, Alexander Gates created a secondary beneficiary trust to activate in the event that the primary heirs were disqualified due to legal or ethical breach. That trust contains the entirety of the Gates estate, all assets, all holdings, all liquid accounts. It has been held in abeyance, managed by neutral trustees, gaining value while this matter was resolved. And the beneficiary of this secondary trust? Drake Alexander Gates, the son who received nothing in the public will. The courtroom goes silent. It's the kind of silence where you can hear the air conditioning and people's thoughts rearranging themselves. Drake feels the eyes turn towards him, but he's focused on something else, on understanding, finally, what his father did. Alexander Gates didn't leave him nothing out of disappointment or punishment. He left him nothing because nothing was the only position from which he could survive. If Drake had inherited directly, Ethan and Ashley would have spent years fighting him in court, freezing assets, destroying the company just for spite. The legal fees alone would have drained millions. The public battle would have destroyed the Gates name. But by being left out, Drake was removed from the battlefield. He couldn't be sued for something he didn't have. He couldn't be accused of manipulating the will when he didn't benefit from it. He was the only person in the family who had no motive except truth. And that's what made him dangerous to liars. Mr. Drake Gates, you inherited nothing, which means you also inherited something very rare: clean hands. Your father taught me that you build with integrity or you don't build at all. I didn't understand why he left me nothing. I thought maybe I'd failed him somehow. But he wasn't punishing me. He was protecting me. And he was protecting his life's work from people who saw it as something to loot. Drake looks at Ethan and Ashley. They won't meet his eyes. I don't take satisfaction in this, but I also won't apologize for it. You made your choices. My father just made sure those choices had consequences. Judge Barron nods once. The estate of Alexander Gates is hereby transferred in its entirety to the secondary trust with Drake Alexander Gates as sole beneficiary. This court is adjourned. The gavel falls. It's a small sound, but it echoes. Drake walks out of the courthouse into Manhattan sunlight that feels different than it did an hour ago. Marston Hale is waiting on the steps, briefcase in hand. "There's a letter. His father left it with me. Instructions were to give it to you after the ruling." He hands Drake an envelope. No wax seal, no ceremony, just paper and ink and the last words of a man who planned his death as carefully as he lived his life. He opens it. 3 sentences written in his father's precise hand. "Drake, I gave you nothing so that no one could take anything from you. I made you wait so that you would be the only one standing when the dust settled. You didn't inherit the fortune, you inherited the truth." Drake reads it twice, then a third time, and he understands. The fortune was never the point. The company, the buildings, the accounts, those were tools. What mattered was proving that character outlasts greed, that patience defeats hunger, that integrity is the only asset that compounds instead of depletes. His father didn't leave him money, he left him a clean future, a company purged of its corruption, a name cleared of its stain, and the knowledge that being left with nothing was the greatest inheritance a father could give. Drake folds the letter and puts it in his jacket pocket, right over his heart. He walks back towards Northline Tower, his tower now, and for the first time in months, the city doesn't look small. It looks like a circuit board of possibility. Because in the architecture of strategic justice, sometimes losing is how you win. Sometimes nothing is everything. And sometimes the favorite son has to be left behind so that he can eventually inherit the truth. The empire his father built is his now. But more importantly, so is the lesson that the most powerful thing you can own isn't money, it's your standing, your integrity, your truth. And no will, no matter how unfair it seems, can take that away unless you let it.
And that's how the favorite son inherited everything, by being left with nothing. If this story got to you, if it made you rethink what justice looks like, or if it reminded you that patience and integrity really do pay off, then do me a favor, subscribe to this channel right now. We bring you true stories like this every single week. Stories about karma, betrayal, hidden justice, and moments that prove character always outlasts greed. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload, and drop a comment below. What would you do if you were left out of a will like Drake? Would you trust the process or fight immediately? Also, if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone dealing with family drama, betrayal, or just needs a reminder that good people can win, share this video with them. Your support means everything, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, sometimes nothing is the greatest gift you can receive.